Hi, I'm Alex and I'm from the Institute of Child Protection Studies and I'm talking to you today. Paula, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, so my name's Paula McGrady. I'm currently the acting team leader of the Cultural Services team at the Community Services Directorate in the ACT.
That's a little bit of a mouthful for you, isn't it?
Thank you.
What does that role, what do you really do in your role?
Okay, so I'm a team leader of three staff. So anything cultural that any of the child youth protection workers need cultural support on with their Indigenous young people, Indigenous families, we're able to go out and support them and
Oh,
give them
that's awesome.
information. So
That's
and
awesome.
we do training as well. So
Okay.
we train in specific areas around cultural.
Mm,
Um,
practices.
yeah,
Now, when
Great.
did you do your Keeping Kids Central training? Can you remember?
that was on the 17th and 18th of August this year.
Yes, of this year. And we did it virtually, didn't we? Which was the first time we'd ever done it virtually. And we had a great little group. So, Paula, how did completing the Keeping Kids Central training influence your day-to-day practice with the children and young people that you work with and or the staff that you support?
Okay, I think it really helped me in the sense that it reminded us of focusing on the children.
Mm, yeah.
That was really, really important. And just trying to think, recognizing their strengths
Mm,
as well.
mm,
And also, one of the most important things I think was uh, to take the child-friendly environment with you.
yeah.
I think that
Okay.
was a really, really important. That kind of stood out for me as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And can you give me an example of something that you've incorporated into your work since that, like taking a child-centered, a child-safe, child-friendly environment with you?
Yeah, look, as the team leader, I mean, when I did the training, I was worked in a different area, but
Yeah.
as the
Yeah.
team leader, it's good to kind of impart some of this knowledge onto the workers in regards to how they do deal with families and
Mm,
young
mm,
people, and never forgetting that the
mm,
child has a voice as
absolutely.
well, and reminding the workers as well to listen to that voice
Mm,
and
yeah.
to believe that little voice. I think
Yeah.
that's
Wow.
really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think you've really hit on a key point there, the believing the
Hmm.
voice, because we know so often that children and young people say what's happening for them, and often as adults they'll go, oh, they're just saying it, or oh, we don't really know if that's happening, but actually giving weight to what they've said and that it has the same weight that it has as an adult if we were having those conversations with them. Absolutely.
Absolutely, absolutely, and particularly if it's a conversation that you're having around, say, a disclosure of child sexual assault, for
Mm,
instance, and what, as a parent, what would be our instant reaction to
mm,
that?
mm,
The fear and that around disclosing that type of abuse, I think it's really, really important. Um, I think it's really important to make sure that the child feels believed,
mm, mm,
um,
mm, mm.
because that's your one opportunity that you possibly may only get when a child does speak of it. A child could flippantly talk about it in a little play scenario with you. You could be like the child could be, helping you to wash up,
Mm,
and something could, trigger them to think about this, and they could say something. And if you're busy cooking
mm,
or whatever,
mm.
you don't want to miss that opportunity.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
and really
Absolutely.
make the most of that opportunity, and
Mm,
then give yourself time then later on to unpack that
mm,
and
mhm.
keep your fear that normally we would react, I think,
Yeah,
um, with a ghastly look at our face, I'm sure,
yeah.
but to make sure that we don't display this to the child, and that because they're going to think that, well, what have I done wrong,
Mm,
or and not understand our reaction.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And do you use any of the Keeping Kids Central activities when you go out to meet with any of the children and young people you meet with, or when you're supporting practitioners?
Um, I do have I haven't yet, as I'm pretty new in the team,
Yeah.
but I do have all of the resources, and I do love the resources around the Charter of the Human Rights
Mm,
for children and young people, and
mm,
also the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, how
yeah.
it was written in child-friendly language. So
Yeah.
these are the kinds of information that you gave us
Mm,
that I will absolutely make sure I
mm,
pass on
mm,
to the workers
mm.
as well. So,
Great.
so the resources in that were awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. And working with Indigenous families, do you feel that the activities are applicable to working with those families and children and young people?
I think the language and the concepts, well, particularly the concepts and the idea of, well, what information we want to gain from the child or the young person is correct.
Mm,
But there's always room for improvement to make it
mm,
even a bit more culturally appropriate and tailor it to, say, like for instance, Ngunnawal people.
absolutely.
Use Ngunnawal language, even
Mm,
though the kids that we have contact with may
mm,
not necessarily be Ngunnawal, but living on Ngunnawal land, they're going to learn a lot of this language and the local
absolutely.
lingo. The Torres Strait Islanders are a more um, uh, it's greeted around the sharing of foods,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that's how they connect a lot more. By sharing, um, that part of their culture
absolutely.
and with the
Absolutely.
family.
Yeah, and that's one of the key principles of the Keeping Kids Central is, my family's important and include my family, include, my family in my life and in what you do because I'm unique and I'm unique within that family. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And I did write down a comment
Mm, mm,
around that as well. And it was about family challenges,
mhm,
and supporting, is important to those relationships as well,
mm, mm,
with the family. So yeah, yeah, to say that it takes a village, it definitely does take a village in a lot of
mm,
respects,
mm,
and
mm.
that village is even more important when it comes to a cultural lens and
Absolutely.
what that looks like as well.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And that's so central to the Keeping Kids Central because, if it takes a village to raise a child, that child is at the center of that village, isn't it? That's what we're
Ab-
saying.
Absolutely, to keep that focus on the kids.
Absolutely. That's awesome. Now, moving on to the next question then, what are some of the ways that CYPS supports practitioners to be more child-centered and child-focused in their practice? Can you share with me some of the ways that you already have in place, which do that? And then do you have other strategies that you use yourself or that you encourage your practitioners that you support to use? So there's kind of two questions in that.
Um, mm,
So do you have policies? Do you have
I
charter of
was
rights? Do you have things like that that support?
Absolutely, we have all of those, and I'm yet to read a lot of that information, being new in the role. But
Mm,
we do have that information there, and we are shown
mm,
that we do have that information, that embedded information, and
mm,
that base of information where we can also rely on
mm,
throughout doing our role, working with families and children and young people.
mm,
So, we do have a guide there,
mm, mm,
um, as well,
mm,
but we can also tailor that to specific trainings.
mm,
And if we identify there's areas that we need support in,
mm,
or that we feel that there's a lack of knowledge or support in that particular area in regards to Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander young people,
mm,
or children,
mm,
then we're given really the full opportunity, to produce
Yeah,
that
okay, fantastic.
that information. So we're
Mm,
very trusted in our space here,
that's
as the
awesome.
experts in that area. Which,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
awesome. That's awesome. Can you
mm,
give me any examples of some of the work that you might have done with children and young people? And as you said, I know you knew,
yeah.
but how you might have guided, some of your the child protection practitioners to work through a child lens or a cultural lens with some children and young people.
I think the family challenges.
Okay.
I think that's where um, we have focused a little bit. And I mean by family challenges, I mean by going into a family and like an Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander family's home,
Mm,
and culturally, if we walk in and we see that home and that child through a cultural lens, is very different to how a non-Indigenous worker would see that family,
mm,
that home environment, and that
mm,
child.
mm,
So even though the child the mum just may have a mattress as a lounge in the lounge, if that child is happy and you can feel that that child is safe and loved,
mm.
doesn't matter if that child doesn't have a three-seater lounge sitting in that room. That
Yeah.
kind of
Yep.
information.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
to see it from the lens of, well, we do live very differently,
Mm,
and what you see is, your fridge will look different to my fridge or
mm,
to a
mm,
family's fridge.
mm.
That's on the poverty line. So,
Yes,
thinking about all of those issues around that, what people still live in sheer poverty.
absolutely.
They struggle from one pay to the next. So, um, our version of what is an empty fridge is very different to their version, and they're
Yeah,
quite resilient. I
absolutely.
feel as well in regards to making sure their kids have got the best. And I've been into a lot of homes and communities, my own in particular, where they don't have the prettiness of how we or a lot of people do live, but you know
Mm.
what? Their foundations are there.
Yeah,
And that's
absolutely.
what we want to keep people focused on,
Yeah.
that foundation. Yeah.
That's a beautiful way to put it, because when you say
Oh,
that to me, I think that means aunties, uncles, grandmothers, grandfathers, elders, everyone around them. That forms the foundation for that child.
the
And so
safety.
whilst the outer aspects, the prettiness, as you said, aren't there, the foundations are there for that child, and that's the most critical thing. And that child is so very much at the centre of that foundational
Ab-
support.
Absolutely. It really, really is. I mean, if and I'm not telling you anything new either, but um, even coming from personal experience,
Mm,
we didn't grow up with much.
yep,
We lived from pay to pay.
yep,
But I always felt loved in
mm,
that home, and I always
mm,
felt safe in that home.
mm, mm,
And that grounded me for the rest of my life,
mm,
that that these other things don't really matter, because I've come from a place of 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 safety and of love from a very young age, where um, now it's just I'm accustomed to it.
mm, mm,
It's like, when I did some training this morning, there was a young girl in the video who was talking about how she's never experienced. She was taken at the age of 3. She never experienced living in a home
mm,
with a mum and a dad,
mm, mm.
and that just like resonated. Not resonated because I live with my mum and dad, but
Yep,
that just made me really think.
mm,
We've got to think of not through our lens
mm,
and what we've got,
mm,
but
mm.
to think of the lens of what we're seeing when we go out into homes that are really struggling, or
Yep,
homes that are coming from a history of trauma.
mm, mm. Yep,
Yeah, so
yep. Yep. And I think that brings up a point too, Paula, that we talked a lot about in the Keeping Kids Central training, was that for children, for them there is a big difference about being safe and feeling safe. So the feeling safe was really important to them. and what they felt inside themselves. So, as a non-Indigenous person, as you said, I might walk into that house that you discussed previously and say, I don't know, is this child safe in this environment? But if I actually spent the time to sit down and talk to the child, their feeling around safety was, yeah, I'm safe and I'm loved and I'm happy here. And I have
That's
the
it.
foundations that support me to be here. Yeah, I think you just summarized that just beautifully.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, that's kind of the end of the formal questions. Is there anything else that you wanted to add about your experience of keeping kids central, or anything you'd like to share with, other practitioners who work through CYPS and at CSD?
Um, Look, it just reminded us the child's right to be heard. I think that training really reminded us all, because we can continue to go along our merry way and go out and visit families and wait for the next allocation to come in, all of that kind of stuff.
Mm,
But to take a step back and to refresh
mm,
is really important, and I think that training really delivered that
mm,
as well. And with this current um, space of COVID, what that looks like for a child as
absolutely.
well,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah,
the family. So we kind of did the training in the middle of it, of
we
that
did.
COVID.
We did. We did.
Yeah, but just
We
to
did.
remind ourselves of the safety around these young children
Mm,
that are not at school,
absolutely.
that are at home, that are still in that environment, because going to school is their safe haven. And
Absolutely. Yep.
so,
And that
look,
was taken away from them.
that was
Absolutely.
absolutely taken away from them. So,
Yeah,
I think just to regroup and to refresh our minds that, what, hey, we've got to step back and remind ourselves to listen to the child,
absolutely.
and to make sure that they feel like they're believed, no matter what, whenever they speak about something traumatic or something that's happened that should not have happened to them. I think that's your opportunity, and if we can, work towards making sure that they get that voice straight up, then that's going to set them, I think, on the right path of feeling like they can trust people and feeling
Absolutely.
believed, and not just about a serious incident, but also to have the trust in you that, that they can come and tell you something that
Mm,
may be a concern,
mm.
that we'll just open up a much more transparent
Deeper
relationship.
and a deeper discussion around issues for them. Absolutely.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I really love that aspect of it, and
Yeah.
the
Awesome.
activities. I found it absolutely, awesome information. I really did. So, and I'm sure the other workers did.
Yeah, that's the
Mm.
feedback that we've had so far. So thank you. And I think it's relevant for staff who've been there for 5 years, and it's relevant for staff who've just walked in the door. I think it's,
Oh,
it's relevant because for the new ones, it's a different way of working,
yep.
perhaps, and a different way of looking, having that child focus. And for the ones who've been, in CSD or CYPS for 5 years, it's reflective time. It gives you some time to reflect on your practice.
Yeah, yeah, and look, like, and as I said, to be able to refresh
Mm,
information, it's really important for us as workers to do that, because we
absolutely.
can go, like I said, we can go on our little merry little way and just be like, yeah, let's just clock in and clock out. No, 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 these are people, these are
Yeah.
lives, they're
Yeah.
children, they deserve the best from us. And look, I profess that all the time, because we get to go home
Mm,
to a safe environment. I get really emotional when I think about this. We get to go home to a safe environment, and a lot
yeah.
of these kids don't.
No, they don't. They don't.
Yeah.
I can see your passion and your big heart, and that is one of the reasons why I wanted to speak to you and interview to you today. Because for you, it's not just a job, as you said. You don't clock in and clock out. This is about little people and their lives. So
These
thank
need us.
you so much.
They need us, don't they?
They
They
do
absolutely need us.
absolutely.
And look, and I'm emotional too, because I love this job and I work with beautiful people that love this job.
Yeah,
And
Yeah,
that's most, that's one of the most important things, so that if you can stand up and if you can say about your team, you know what, you're doing the right thing. You're helping to protect these kids. We're all on the same page, because
absolutely.
these kids, they damn deserve it.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
totally wholeheartedly agree with everything you've said. Thank you so much. I'll let you go.